أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome all. Inshallah, today we are going into the third week of discussing Al-Hakam, the divine name of Al-Hakam, roughly translated as the Sapient. Inshallah, we had discussed the first two matters out of 5 matters. We had discussed the first 2 matters in the past couple weeks. We did discuss things about, the name of Al-Hakam having components of the name of Al-Hakim, and we have seen that it has components of the name of Al-Hakim, or in other words, as we translated as the Sapient. There is also the translation as the wise judge. So there is a deep meaning in this name. So we have been taking our time pretty much to cover different aspects of this name. So inshallah, this will be the third week, and we will inshallah cover it for one more week next week, and finish it inshallah. So inshallah, I'll start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So again, this is from the 30th Flash of the Risale-i Nur Collection in the book Flash, the Flashes, and within that it is the third of the 6 Ismi Azam, the 6 lies emanating from the greatest name, the greatest divine name, Ismi Azam. And we did discuss the concept of Ismi Azam a little bit when we were discussing Ismi Quddus, the name of the holy. But inshallah, anytime you have comments about the greatest name and how this name is a part of the greatest name, inshallah, it'll be welcome. As for our speakers, Colin Turner, Dr. Colin Turner will join us this week. Last week, he was able to join a bit late due to the time changes. This week, again, we had another time change in the US. We rolled back our clocks one hour. So our time difference, I think, is now with Europe, it's the same as it was, but with Turkey, I think it's 8 hours. So inshallah, we ask our attendees to keep that in mind. And Mustafa Tuna from North Carolina is inshallah joining us as well. And Dr. Tuna, inshallah, we always welcome his insights and his reflections as well. So I'll read the beginning part of this 30th Flash again, just to, the third part, the Ism Hakam again, so that we know what we are trying to explain, where Ustad Said Nursi is trying to make the tafsir for the ayah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah. Invite all to the way of your sustainer with wisdom. And again, we discussed in the previous weeks that with wisdom, I think with bil hikmah is the part that is relevant. Of course, everything about this ayah is relevant to this name, but they share the same root, al-Hakam, and the hikmah shares the root. But we had discussed this in the last couple of weeks. Again, I'll read the first part of this part again. One manifestation of the divine name of Sapient, Al-Hakam, which is the greatest name or one of the 6 lies of the greatest name. And a fine point of the above verse appeared to me in the month of Ramadan while in Eskişehir prison. This third point consists of 5 matters and forms only an allusion to it. It was written in haste and has remained in its original form. So inshallah, and I'll start and read through the third matter, which is a bit lengthy, but I would like to go through it. And inshallah, and I'll inshallah come back to our speakers and ask for their insights, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The third matter, with his names of Sapient, Al-Hakam, and All-Wise, Al-Hakim, the all-powerful maker has included thousands of well-ordered worlds in this world. Within those worlds, He created man, the human being, as a center and pivot who of all creatures manifests the wisdom and purposes in the universe. The most important of the instances of wisdom and beneficial things in the sphere of the universe look to man, the human being. And in the human sphere, he made sustenance a center. In the human world, most of the instances of wisdom and benefits look to sustenance and are manifest through it. The manifestation of the name of Al-Hakim, all-wise, is apparent in brilliant form in man, the human being, through his intelligence and the pleasure he receives from sustenance. Each one of the hundreds of sciences discovered by human intelligence describes the manifestation of the name of Sapient Al-Hakam in a realm of creation. For example, if the science of medicine were to be asked, what is the universe? It would be bound to reply, it is an exceedingly vast, orderly, and perfect pharmacy. All remedies are prepared and stored up in it in the best way. If the science of chemistry were asked, what is the earth? It would reply, it is a perfectly ordered chemist's shop. The science of engineering would reply, it is totally faultless, perfect factory. The science of agriculture would reply, it is an infinitely productive, regular, and well laid out field and garden which produces all kinds of seeds at the required time. The science of commerce would reply, it is an extremely well set out exhibition, orderly market, and shop stocked with most artistic wares. The science of economics would reply, it is an exceedingly well arranged warehouse containing every sort of kind of food. The science of dietetics would reply, it is a dominical kitchen and cauldron of the most merciful in which are cooked most regularly hundreds of thousands of the most delicious foods. The science of soldiering would reply, the earth is a military camp. Although there are 400,000 different nations, species in that army, newly taken under arms, with their tents pitched on the face of the earth, they are given their rations, uniforms, weapons, training, and discharges, which are different for each nation, in perfect order, with no confusion and none being forgotten, through the command, power, compassion of a single commander-in-chief from his treasury. They are all administered in the most regular fashion. And if the science of electricity were to be asked, what is this world? It will certainly reply, the roof of this magnificent palace of the universe has been adorned with innumerable orderly and balanced electric lamps. And the order and balance are so wondrous that, foremost the sun and those heavenly lamps, which are 1,000 times larger than the earth, do not spoil their balance, although they burn continuously, they do not explode or burst into flames. Their expenditure is endless, so where do their income and fuel and combustible material come from? Why are they not exhausted? Why is the balance not spoiled with their burning? A small lamp goes out if it is not tended regularly. See the wisdom and power of the all-wise one of glory, Hakim Jalal, who makes the sun, which, according to astronomy, is 1,000,000 times larger than the earth and 1,000,000 years older, burn without coal or oil, without being extinguished. Say, all glory be to God. Subhanallah. Note, you can reckon just how much wood, coal, and oil would be necessary for the stove or lamp of the sun, which heats the palace of the world. According to the reckoning of astronomy, piles of wood equal to 1,000,000 earths and thousands of oceans of oil would be necessary for it to burn each day. Now think and say, glory be to God. What wonders God has willed, blessed be God. Subhanallah, MashaAllah, Barakallah. To the number of the sun's particles in the face of the majesty, wisdom, and power of the all-powerful one of glory, Qadir Jalal, who makes it give light continuously without firewood or oil. Say, what wonders God has willed. Blessed be God. There is no God but He. MashaAllah, Barakallah, La ilaha illahu, to the number of seconds of the sun's existence. This means there is a wondrous order in these heavenly lamps, and they are tended with the greatest care. It is as if the boiler of those huge, numerous fiery masses, those light-shedding lamps, is a hell whose heat is never exhausted. It provides them with lightless heat, while the machinery and central factory of those electric lamps is a perpetual paradise. It provides them with light and luminosity. Through the greatest manifestation of the names of Al-Hakam, of Sapient, and all-wise Al-Hakim, they continue to burn in orderly fashion, and so on. Through the certain testimony of hundreds of sciences like these, the universe has been adorned with innumerable instances of wisdom, purposes, and beneficial things within a faultless, perfect order. And the order and wisdom given through that wondrous, all-encompassing wisdom to the totality of the universe have been included in small measure in seeds and the tiniest living creatures. It is clear and self-evident that aims, purposes, instances of wisdom and benefits can only be followed through choice, will, intention, and volition, not in any other way. Neither could they be the work of unconscious causes and nature, which lack will, choice, and purpose, nor could they interfere in them. That is to say, it is extraordinary ignorance and foolishness not to recognize or to deny the all-wise Maker, the Sani Hakim, the agent with choice, whom the universe and all its beings necessitate and demonstrate through their infinite order and the instances of wisdom they contain. Yes, if there is anything astonishing in the world, it is such denial. For the endless aspects of order and instances of wisdom in the beings in the universe testify to his existence and unity, so that even the most profoundly ignorant can understand what blindness and ignorance it is not to see or not to recognize him. I might even say that among the people of unbelief, the sophists, who are supposed to be stupid because they deny the universe's existence, are the most intelligent. For since on accepting its existence, it was not possible not to believe in God and its creator, they started to deny the universe's existence. They denied the sophists. They denied themselves as well, saying there is nothing. They abdicated their intelligences and being saved from the boundless unreasonableness under the guise of reason of the other deniers, they in one sense drew close to reason. So it was again a bit lengthy, but I wanted to read through it once so that um, we don't miss the chance towards the end of the session um, to read it. But of course, we'll come back and study like what I think this part of this work tells us. Especially, I think what we have seen is the wisdom and anything with all the aspects and angles that we see some wisdom and the way we can interpret this to understand the name of Al-Hakam. So inshallah, maybe Kolnabi, would you like to start us off?
Inshallah. That was a lot, mashallah. You read it beautifully. You must be quite tired. There's the whole passage. When you send me the passage, I tried to break it down conceptually, and I don't know whether I was successful, but I'm looking at it from three different perspectives. One is the perspective of Al-Hakam and the issue of sustenance. One is sustenance and the issue of criteria. And I think criteria or criterion, Furqan, is an important concept when we think of Al-Hakam, because Al-Hakam gives us the idea not just of wisdom, but of wise judgment. So criteria is also important. And then the third perspective was Al-Hakam and the Sharia systems. I don't know whether there will be time today to go all through these. They're still a little bit messed up in my mind. But just to kick things off, Ustad Nursi starts here talking about sustenance. That's the first focus of his attention. And all of the wisdoms and the wise purposes that we find in creation, as far as the human realm is concerned, seem to focus to a large extent on sustenance, on rizq and on razaqiyah, on the existence and the sourcing of sustenance on the use and consumption of sustenance, and of course on the benefits and corollaries of sustenance that we get in the form of outputs, results, and outcomes. And it's not without reason that Maulana Rumi said, human life is just eating and being eaten. He said it in a jokey way, jocularly, but there is a streak of seriousness running through it. The main benefit of human existence is the opportunity that we have as human beings of discovering our Creator, understanding His names and attributes, learning to appreciate and love those attributes, and then on account of those attributes, worshiping Him. And there are so many of those attributes which are made manifest to us through the phenomenon of sustenance, of rizq, in all of its varieties, shapes, forms, sizes, tastes, natures, colors, etc. The fact that we are corporeal in nature, we have a body, we're material in form, and we are decked out with material and non-material senses, hissiyat and lata'if, it shows that much of our discovery of these divine names takes place through the sensory organs. And much of that involves the senses of touch, taste, and smell. All of these are integral to, the processes that go on in our body, such as digestion, and from digestion to other processes, such as circulation, respiration, growth. Because rizq, sustenance, I'm not talking here just about food and drink. That would be very reductive, I think. Sustenance means anything that is bestowed on us to facilitate our continued existence, whether it's the fuel that we ingest in the form of food and drink, fuel for the stomach, or whether it's the fuel that we take on board in the form of spiritual sustenance, such as knowledge, learning, thoughts, ideas, feelings, and so on, all of which are food for the spirit and the soul. So rizq is anything that we consume, whether it's a kebab or a book, whether it's a drink of milk or a video on the wonders of creation. And our Sunday circle, circles such as this are also an important element of our sustenance. And if we didn't have eyes or ears or a brain, none of these bounties would be accessible. So I understand why Ustad Nursi is focusing on sustenance here. Sustenance is key. It's central to our understanding of creation in general, and the divine names in particular, and Al-Hakam.
Yeah, it's a great introduction. Thanks, Dr. Konavi. It's indeed the sustenance. I also noticed that it is definitely given some spotlight here on this part, and it's in the center of the human life, and understanding the divine names through sustenance of all sorts, I think, is definitely something that is a lot of meaning behind it, and it makes probably our everyday operations or our everyday mundane tasks more enjoyable, right? I mean, eating food which might seen as enjoyable, but still mundane to some extent, or you did every day. It probably, inshallah, adds another dimension of enjoyment through discovering divine names through all that. So, inshallah, it's a great point. Mustafa abi, would you like to also comment on the sustenance piece as well as
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I mean, mashallah, Kolin Hojam has thought this out and through. I'm not as diligent and responsible as him to, prepare in advance. I'm just sitting here and trying to figure out. I was also intrigued with the notion of rizq and the following notions of what's translated as intelligence and pleasure here, but the Turkish actually is shu'ur, not aql or zeka, not intelligence, but consciousness or awareness. So I kept looking at the text on the screen to find like, where is it? And then I noticed, oh, it is translated as intelligence. But I think we might be missing something by translating it as intelligence, and that relates to what Koyun Hocam was talking about too. I mean, I don't know how you, I wasn't here, unfortunately, the previous 2 weeks, but I don't know how you distinguished between Hakim, and Hakim. But, based on what you also mentioned at the beginning, they are all related to the word hikmah, and we can think of it as understanding or placing benefits and purposes in things. And I'm saying understanding, that will be from our point of view. For us, hikmah is to understand the benefits and uses and connections that God has placed in the creation. And from God's point of view, or in thinking about God, that would be placing those connections, benefits, purposes in things. And our duty, responsibility here then is to notice, recognize, understand, appreciate, be awed, fall in a state of awe and appreciation, and offer gratitude in turn. So, the phrases that Ustad Nursi uses toward the end of this passage, like MashaAllah, Barakallah, La ilaha illallah, Subhanallah, right? All of those indicate this point. So if our responsibility here is to recognize, to be aware of what's going on, the concept of sustenance, and especially as Ustad Nursi mentions here, the concept or the fact of pleasure, delight in receiving sustenance becomes very important, because for somebody who is full all the time, much of the forms of sustenance, and we are reducing it, I'm reducing it to food at this point just as an example. Otherwise, the concept of sustenance, of course, very broad, as Koyun Hocam mentioned. But for somebody who is always full, never tastes hunger, if you will, being able to recognize, be aware of the various kinds of sustenance, and especially various kinds of benefit and mercy in the food that is put in front of this person, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times, I don't know how many times a day, becomes very difficult. But for the one who tastes hunger, who experiences hunger, then it becomes easier. So the level of awareness increases with it, and with the fulfillment of that need, and with the pleasure in the fulfillment of that need, the form of, the kind of awareness that this person goes through also changes. So it is one thing to be aware of a need while you are in need, and that's painful. And it's another thing to be aware of a need when you are receiving the sustenance and you are in a state of pleasure, and therefore closer to gratitude. So in the first one, you are closer to dua, supplication. In the second one, you are closer to gratitude. But ultimately, we want to reach the level of gratitude. Even in deprivation, there are things to be grateful for. But this makes it easier. Now, going back to the concept of shu'ur, consciousness or awareness, I think that connects us to the pieces that will come after this, to the sciences that Ustad Nursi is talking about, to rendering those sciences means of awareness of the purposes, the benefits, the connections, the wisdom that God has placed in the creation.
Jazakallah khair. Thanks. Yeah, indeed. The sustenance and how they are manifested and how people experience that, I think. And you pointed out that that the sustenance, the existence of the sustenance, the need for sustenance, all of them, I think, point to different aspects of the name of All-Wise, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakam also, as well as I think other names. And I guess one question, but also we can go through this, different sciences explaining Allah's names, but we also see these other names, right? I mean, for example, and what I would maybe follow up here is that like sustenance, like when we think about sustenance and sustenance being given, we usually directly think about the name of Razak, right? The sustainer, the provider. But of course, Ustad Nursi here uses it in the context of Al-Hakam, in the sub-meaning of maybe Al-Hakim or wise. How should we understand? And is this the case for everything? I mean, should we understand all the divine actions around us, not just by one name, but like this combination of names? And again, the establishing of this, sustenance and the hikmah. Like how do we see this? Do we see this like more clearly than we see the name Al-Razzaq here? Um, and like, and how should we connect this to the concept of Ismi Azam? Because the Ismi Azam is supposed to, I guess, manifest more broadly, right? And we had in the past couple weeks, I guess, we had this discussion where all the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, divine names, are like these threads, forming an embroidery, but the Ismi Azam, the greatest names, are thicker threads, more visible threads, and the other threads might be connected to them as well in certain aspects. Is the case of that, like in terms of sustenance, should we think of the name of Al-Hakam or Al-Hakim more than we think of Al-Razzaq, or am I missing a point here? Or should I rephrase my question?
I don't think you are missing a point. I think you're looking at proportionality, and you're looking at things which are either key or not key. And these, to a certain extent, I think are subjective. But Al-Hakam, Ustad is focusing, I think, is it on 6 words? And I think we've already done 3 of them. I can't remember how many we've done.
Yeah, out of 5
in this flash, and Al-Hakam would seem
the third,
to be,
yes, the third.
This is the third. Al-Hakam would seem to be key, because going back to sustenance, and I thought about the issue of criteria and criterion. Sustenance depends on systems, right? On various systems, and it's operationalized, if you will, in accordance with various criteria. And criteria are simply standards and rules, organizational laws, if you wish, on which systems and structures and organizational nexuses, if you wish, are constructed. And if you look at the etymology, and I didn't go into it too deeply, but if you look at the etymology and you look at the word criterion, it comes from the Greek kriterion, which in turn comes from the word, I think it was krites, which means judge. That's very interesting, because the notion of judgment is at the heart of the meaning of the word Al-Hakam, because it means, one of its meanings is one who judges wisely. So Al-Hakam is not only wise judge, but also the wise possessor of an absolute criterion. And I think this is brought out in that next section, where Ustad goes on to discuss the various different sciences that human intelligence and the human intellect have discovered. And he says that each of these sciences describes a particular manifestation of Al-Hakam in a particular realm of creation. So he personifies these sciences. For example, medicine, he says, if you ask medicine what the universe is, medicine would say it's an exceedingly, to quote him word for word, an exceedingly vast, orderly, and perfect pharmacy. This is because medicine is operating on a criterion that pertains just to medicine. So the standard by which medicine judges the criterion is the standard or criterion of medicine itself. In other words, it sees and it judges the world with its own standards or criteria. So in this case, since we know that medicine deals with the dispensing of carefully measured out medication, medicine looks at creation with that criterion and with those eyes. And it says that creation itself is like a pharmacy full of wisely constructed and well-fashioned beings that God has put together with the utmost order, balance, and equilibrium. So all entities are like living medications, if you wish, with a few molecules taken from this element and a few molecules from that element, all brought together to form this orderly and balanced whole. And he goes on then to question all of the other sciences. Why does he do this? He questions them on how they see the creation. And we soon realize that each of those sciences judges according to its own particular set of criteria. So engineering sees the universe as a perfect factory, I think he says, while chemistry sees it as a perfect laboratory, I think. Agriculture sees the cosmos as a field or a garden with seeds which are planted and crops which are harvested at the proper time. And then he goes on to talk about commerce and business, who see the cosmos as a market or as an exhibition center. And none of these criteria would contravene or contradict the others. So judged as constituent parts of a whole, they are all seen as complementary and mutually beneficial. So what I think that Ustad is focusing on here is that there is in every system on earth and in creation a nexus of organizational rules and laws and standards which all operate according to a particular criterion. And these criteria make up the absolute criterion, which is Hakamiyya. So there is nothing in creation which doesn't operate according to a criterion. And I think this is very important because Al-Hakamiyya goes to the heart of every living and inanimate entity in creation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the connection of these sciences to hikmah, the wisdom and criterion, I think is a great connection and a great way to look at this, because I think the sciences, as you said, and in some, I guess, older language, I mean, sometimes they even call science as like hikmah. So there's definitely science and wisdom, looking for wisdoms behind these, looking for with different criterion, as you suggested, because like a pharmacist looking at the world probably is different than an engineer would, but they, from all those angles, from all those criteria, there's perfection in everything that we look at. So I think the connection there is great. Before I go to Mustafa Abi, Nebi Abi on the chat has wrote something. I would like to read it. I think it's a part from the Risale-i Nur, I believe. So I'll quickly read it, inshallah. Because of this important comprehensiveness, the ever-living and self-subsistent one, Hayyu Samad, one has given man a stomach and appetite with which he allows him to understand all his names and to taste all the varieties of his bounty. And he has generously laid on the table with endless varieties of foods for man's stomach. He has also made life a stomach, like the physical one, and he has spread an extensive table of bounties before the senses, which are like the hands of the stomach of life. With the senses, life offers a sort of thanks for all the ways it benefits from the table of bounties. After the stomach of life, he has bestowed on man the stomach of humanity, which requires sustenance and bounties in a wider sphere than life. Intelligence, mind, and imagination, the hands of the stomach, benefit from the table of mercy, which is as broad as the heavens and the earth, and give thanks. After the stomach of humanity, he has spread before man another table of bounties which is infinitely vast. He has made the beliefs of Islam like an immaterial stomach, requiring extensive sustenance, and has extended this table outside the sphere of contingency and included in it the divine names. With this stomach and the great pleasure of sustenance, man perceives the name of all merciful and all wise, Ar-Rahman, Al-Hakim, and exclaims, all praise be to God for his mercifulness and his wisdom, and so on. Man is able to benefit from limitless divine bounties with this vast immaterial stomach. And there is a further sphere in the stomach, which is the pleasure of divine law. So this is another part, I guess, also connecting the divine names and sustenance, as we first talked about beautifully from another part of the Risale-i Nur. So speaking of this, we kind of switch from like the sustenance to wisdom and sciences and how we can understand, and this concept of criterion for each science and how they see the universe. Mustafa abi, would you have any insights on how we should understand these, like this connection of science and the name of Al-Hakam?
Sure, I can try. Before that, I guess this quoted part is from the 24th word, right? So that we,
okay.
Also make sure that we know what we are reading. Yeah, I was actually thinking about the question that you asked about the Ism al-Azam, the most tremendous name. The idea there is different people or different things, or the Ism al-Azam, the most tremendous name, can be different for different people, for different things, for different contexts. In the way that when we think about the word Ar-Rahman, it is mercy that without distinguishing, that is given to everything and covers everything, right? And then Rahim is specified, right? So if one name is specified on one person or one context, that name can be the Ism al-Azam from that point of view. Like when you look from there, that can be the Ism al-Azam. But at the same time, there are names that are more comprehensively applying to or manifesting on everything, and therefore they are the Ism al-Azam in a more absolute sense. And I think it was Kolin Hocam who brought this up in an earlier panel that I was in, the notion of the concept of constellation that Ustad Nursi uses is perhaps important or could be useful to remember here, right? So the name Al-Razak is showing itself in the constellation of Al-Hakam, right? So we are seeing Al-Razak through Al-Hakam in this sense. So those names that give us more opportunity to see other names through their windows then become the closer to that idea of absolute Ism al-Azam, absolute most tremendous name. So if we look with that understanding, all of these sciences connect to a name, a divine name too. Right? So we think of medicine, for instance, Ash-Shafi, it connects to Ash-Shafi. I won't be able to go through the parse it out all through, but there are other contexts where we can see this, right? So when we look at medicine, for a person who is sick or for a doctor, the most tremendous name may be Ash-Shafi, but Ash-Shafi also shows itself through Al-Hakam, because Hakam relates to wisdom and how things are connected. And the doctor, when the doctor looks at the body, the doctor is looking at how parts of the body connect to one another, how the body lives, survives in the larger context of the world, how the liver benefits the heart benefits the lung, how every that system as Kolin Hocam was talking about. So in all of these, be it Al-Shafi, be it Al-Mudabbir, be it Ar-Razaq, right? Whichever of these names, or through the window of whichever of these names we look, we are also looking through the window of Al-Hakam. And therefore, all of these sciences from their smaller windows, right, are in a sense looking to the larger window of Al-Hakam, and through that larger window, we are trying to know about our Lord and appreciate His blessings.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, yes, it's a great way to look at it, like these multiple windows, one within the other. I mean, it's different filters applied, I guess, right, to the way we look at things, but they are not, I guess, mutually exclusive, right? We can see the components of one name within the other. The concept of constellations, I think, is a good one too, right? I mean, they're all like stars, but there are these lines that connect, that we can see, connecting them. They line up. Sometimes these names, maybe they line up on certain things, like engineering, I guess, the name of Al-Hakam, but also the name of Al-Muqaddir, probably also, right? The one does things with calculation, I think is definitely the case with the medicine, Al-Shafi, as well as Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, seeing them all at the same time through the lens of Al-Shafi, reaching to the name of Al-Hakam. I think these are all great meanings. Jazakallah khair. Brother Harun Abi in the chat has written from his view of systems engineering, which is another good aspect of looking at things, and the name of Al-Hakam. He says, systems engineering starts with customer specifications translated to technical performance measures, which is abbreviated as TPMs, technical performance measures, during the life cycle of a product, including design, manufacturing, and logistics activities such as maintenance and distribution. TPMs are key values to satisfy. Al-Hakam decides on the TPMs for us and the universe we are in, and the universe we are in, to keep us maintained in our life cycle. So, in the systems engineering piece, I guess, right, these technical performance measures, or these criterion, and probably comes back to Kulnabi's word of criterion for each science, or the criterion that are to be kept. I think Al-Hakam also in that sense is relevant to keep those criterion in check at all times as we continue our lives. By the way, Nebi Abi quoted that the quotation that he cited, I think, is from Ismail Qayyum, which is again 30th Flash, but I think it's the 5th or 6th that we will be discussing, inshallah. So, of course, we talked about these sciences, all these different sciences, commerce, economics, dietetics, and in each of them, what we see is these perfection and these, the wonder of it. Again, in the soldiering, I think it is the military camp. Again, all these species are taking care of at the same time in a perfect order. Electricity, I think this hits a bit closer to home for myself, like an electrical engineer. Again, all these maintenance of these huge lamps, right? I mean, this is, we are all after energy, new sources of energy and stuff, and this seemingly continuous and unending source of energy from the sun. I think it is it's also a great example, I guess. And it is, of course, all shows the name of all wise. And again, he continues in this part, all these sciences, and he connects back to, of course, the unity of the creator, right? The unity, the choice. I mean, and some of the concepts that I would like to highlight here is follow through, choice, all these benefits, instance of purpose, aims, purposes, instance of wisdom. Maybe I'll read this last part so that we can discuss a little bit more. And so on through the certain testimony of hundreds of sciences like these, the universe has been adorned with innumerable instances of wisdom, purposes, and beneficial things within a faultless, perfect order. And the order and wisdom given through that boundless, all-encompassing wisdom to the totality of the universe have been included in small measure in seeds and the tiniest living creatures. It is clear and self-evident that aims, purposes, instances of wisdom, and benefits can only be followed through choice, will, intention, and volition, not in any other way. Neither could they be the work of unconscious causes and nature which lack will, choice, and purpose, nor could they interfere in them. So maybe these concepts of will, intention, volition, um, and purposes, aims, instance of wisdom, um, and they again with the lens of the name of Al-Hakam, the criterion, the wise judge, the sapient. Any insights on how we can understand this and how we can how we should maybe make the connection to these different concepts, I think, to the name, or any other points, I guess, because I didn't really let Kulnabi speak after Mustafa Abi spoke. So if that also, if you have other thoughts, feel free to share them to Kulnabi.
I think I spoke enough, actually. I was very impressed by Mustafa Hoja's reminder to us of the notion of constellation, and I liked his expression, seeing one name through the window of other names. I think what he's done is he's reminding us, he's hit on the very secret of Marifatullah, really, of how to see Allah is to look at the names and look for names within names, because this is what inoculates us against shirk. You know, instead of dividing up the creation between causes and between different forces, we are giving everything to Allah by seeing his creation from different perspectives, different systems and different structures. So this stops us from, the temptation to give or attribute what we see in the creation to anything other than him. So that really was an important point that was made about the constellations. We have to, I think, actively in our meditation on creation is look through different windows and try to identify the names and acknowledge them. I wanted to say something about Al-Hakam and the Sharia systems, but I don't think we're going to have time, maybe next week. But just one point, when Harun Hoja was talking about, is it TPMs?
Yes.
I just wanted to throw this into the ring.
Sure.
I don't think that Allah, as Al-Hakam, formulates criteria or sets boundaries or puts laws in place. God as wise judge, if Al-Hakam can be translated as wise judge, he doesn't make laws and then institute them. Laws are an inexorable corollary or follow on. Sorry, let me just silence this.
And it's an interesting point about I guess
Sorry.
the point that you're about to make.
Yeah, sorry. Laws are a follow-on from his attributes as Al-Hakam, as possessor of wisdom and wise judgeship. So his wise judgeship and his wisdom in the setting of criteria, I was going to talk about, it finds its most potent expression in the three Sharia systems, which we have, the Sharia Takwiniya, the Sharia Fitriya and the Sharia Tashri'iyya. But we can talk about this next week. That was just one point I wanted to wanted to make clear, that he doesn't make laws. Laws are what emerge from his creation.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess some of the terms, I think, probably also lead to that, right? I mean, like the term of adatullah, right? The tradition or the custom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the laws, right? The in the Sharia, or the way that sometimes we name those laws, they're not laws in the. So I mean, yeah, it can be a slippery slope. I agree. I mean, in the sense that if we assume that God has instituted laws, we might again slip to think that he's bound by those laws as well.
Absolutely, that's the danger of thinking that he acts in accordance with laws.
Yeah,
but that's not the case.
Yeah, so that's definitely a larger topic that we can definitely discuss in the future. We have touched upon that in some of the previous sessions and things on some other topics, but definitely, that is a great point to make. Thanks for that. So one brother, I think, could be Brother Baikar, I don't know. He logged in as Lighthouse for Humanity, or Brother Jesmi. So he says, I am still not completely sure about the differences of Hakim, Hakam, and Hakim. So, and I guess the message was not complete. So maybe I'll throw it again, because there was some discussion. There wasn't definitive, I would say. But since we also have Mustafa Tunabi here, with his understanding and his insights, maybe we can try to tackle that again, because again, this is this part is a follow-on. The last page that we read is a follow-on about all these things, all these sciences and wisdom and evolution and purpose leading to the divine understanding of divine unity and existence of God, and that the and a note about sophists, which we can read later, which is about basically, which we read already, I guess, but basically, if you understand, if you see the universe's existence, you have to understand and conclude that there needs to be a creator of this universe. So that is one point, but we also read about these aim and purposes and evolution and criterion, and we did touch upon like things about like wise judge and Al-Hakim, the all wise, and the name of Hakam, the sapient, and the question still, if there's additional explanation or additional insights on these difference, right? The root again is hikmah. If there are any additional insights on that point, I think Uswatunabi, if you would like to share them with us as well. And also if you have other follow-on to Konabi, it will be also good to know.
Yeah, mashallah, we have 5 minutes. You piled up all the questions. Okay, let me try. I mean, I don't know what what were the insights that you covered here last week, but I can share my simple understanding of the matter. I feel more comfortable about the word Hakam because it's a difficult name. I feel somewhat comfortable when I think of it as the combination of Hakim and Hakim. When I put the two together, and the two examples come to my mind. One is, imagine a system, any system. Sometimes they have these toys that you have like 3 hanging balls, and they keep banging at each other and moving, and it looks like it is self-perpetuating system. So there's a very delicate balance that's built into it, right? So this toy that's constantly moving, right? But if you take out the person who's looking at it and taking pleasure out of it. So if you just take it out and just imagine the three balls hitting one another constantly, hanging in the air, it looks like there is no purpose, right? So there is a hakim there. There is power. There is a system that's built and that's functioning, and there is a force that's there is a sustaining force that's keeping it moving, right? But then you think like, well, what is the purpose? There is no purpose. It's just moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So although this is simplifying the matter, I'm not saying that this is what hakim means. It doesn't mean that. But if you were to try to, for sake of argument, to simplify things, to understand the matter. And when I think of hakim, I think of, let's say, a hermit somewhere in a cave who has developed insight about everything in existence, etc., has a lot of knowledge. If I were to go to him and ask about how to bring the pandemic to an end, he would know the answer, etc., etc. But he's a hermit somewhere in the mountains. There is no benefit from his knowledge to anybody. He just has the knowledge, he just has the wisdom, but doesn't use it, doesn't put it into action. So hakam is when we put the capacity to make things work in harmony, in agreement with one another, and the wisdom that knows and places those benefits, those connections, those utilities in there. And very quickly, perhaps another example that might help us understand is, since I did do Russian history, I'm thinking of Ivan the Terrible, Ivan the Fourth, who, because he was afraid of some evil spirits and etc., would boil lead in his room, thinking that this is going to help with evil spirits. As a result of which, he lost his mind, and he, in a state of rage, killed his son. And there was no successor. There was a succession crisis in Russia for a long time. Lots of people died, absolute crisis and turmoil, etc., etc. So he had the rule. He had a lot of power, but he did not use it in a wise way. So Hakam, I like to think, has the power and also has the wisdom in using that power. And we see Al-Hakam in the wisdomful implementation, of wisdomful activity in the universe. So in that, I don't know, I don't know what was said here last week, but that kind of helps me think about the matter. And if I can plug one more thing in there, somewhere Said Nursi says, when we read religious books, and be it Ghazali, be it Imam Nawawi, etc., we should read them to look at the Quran, to understand the Quran, as gateways to the Quran. If we read them to understand what Ghazali is saying, that's loses the purpose. So same thing may apply to these sciences that he mentions here, right? We read books of medicine, or we try to understand, we learn about the findings of medicine. Ultimately, we should do it so in order to learn about our Lord. The chemistry, ultimately, we should read it, understand it, learn about it to understand our Lord. That that then takes us again to the notions of window, the concept of windows and constellations, right? So chemistry is a window through which we look, and then we see ultimately in Al-Hakam, and then other let's say Muqaddir, maybe engineering. But it is the beginning. It is the first window that we look through, most accessible to us as human beings who are sensory creatures in this world.
Thank you. And I think it was a pretty beautiful ending to the session as well, I would guess. But thanks. I mean, the name of like the wise judge and the wise ruler, I guess, in one sense, there was a great explanation of the combination of wisdom and rulership and how that they are connected in the name of Al-Hakam. Really great insights. Jazakallah khair for that, Mustafa. Any final insights, Kulnabi, before we finish?
No, sorry, thank you. That was
Okay.
a very good ending from Mustafa.
Right. Mustafa, would you like to end with a dua for us?
No, Kolin Hocam does that well.
Okay.
O wise judge, O wise one, O wise ruler, please give us the encouragement and the fortitude to look through the windows of your names, to find other names behind them, and to look at the constellations of your names, and to discover those names which rise through them, inshallah.
Thank you, everyone. Inshallah, we'll see you inshallah next week for the final installation of our name of Al-Hakam, and then after that, inshallah, we'll continue the name of Al-Hayy.
Thank you for your expert moderation, Mustafa.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
It's easy with you. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum.